Hello and welcome. I'm Rhema Augustine, and I'm the Vice President of Talent, Equity, and Inclusion at the Forays Foundation. And I'm thrilled to be at the 3% conference again every year. It just seems to get better and better. If you don't know about the Forays Foundation, it's the nonprofit arm of the Forays that drives many of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that support the industry at large. From our scholarship and awards, our educational programs, of course, MAPE, our Multicultural Advertising Intern Program, and our newest program that we started in its inaugural year now is called Vanguard. And we really built Vanguard to help bridge a gap to the pathway to promotion for Black talent. And it's been in our first year and a really important time in the industry to be able to have this pathway. And we're really, really excited to be able to talk about that and really understand how Vanguard really works and intentionally to support also our Black female creatives. And it's in a conversation we're going to have today. I'm really excited to have with two of our Vanguard fellows currently in our first program, in our first cohort, and that are Laronda Davis and Terea Shafer. I'm going to say hello to them in a second. Today, we're going to be talking about a really important topic, right? Especially for 3%, where the mission and movement was really to help drive female creatives in the industry, and it's moved from 3 to 29%, which is amazing. And the simple fact is still that Black women still struggle when it comes to the advancement and the opportunity. And so with the big focus right now on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understanding the importance for creating that space, we've invited our two Vanguard fellows to be able to really talk about the importance of an industry, their experience, and the impact that Vanguard is having to be able to help support this conversation. So hello, Laronda. Hi, Taraya. How are you both doing?
Hi, doing good.
Hello.
Why don't you actually say a little bit about yourselves first? You know, you've both been working in industry and have a lot of amazing experience that I've gotten the privilege to be able to hear and learn about this year during Vanguard. So Laronda, why don't I start with you? Share just like a minute about who you are.
Sure. My name is Laronda Davis. I'm a SVP Creative Director at Publicis, New York. I've been at the agency for about 15 years. I've been in the industry for about 25 years, and I've been creative director for a minute, but more of the kind of group level creative director for probably about 2 years now. Yeah, and I'm based in New York, from Arizona. Went to the University of Texas at Austin, Hook'em Horns. But yeah, very happy to be part of this and part of the Vanguard program.
Thank you. It's really great getting to know you so far. And Taraya, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Terea Shafer, and I've been with Saatchi & Saatchi New York for over 8 years in the role of a senior project manager / operations. But just recently, within the year, I actually created a new role that the agency took on as a cultural curator director. So I've been in that role since March. In total in the industry, I've been in the industry almost 18 years, so for a while. So I was very excited to be a part of this panel.
Yes, thank you. You have really amazing perspectives, you know, having worked in the industry for a while now, you know, and experiencing different agencies. And I think this conversation is not new to you, right? The discussion of the importance of creating space for Black female creatives and, you know, pathways to promotion into the industry. I just love to honestly just hear a little bit of your point of view on the experience you've had with this topic and, you know, what your thought is. So let me start with Terea first. You know, share with me the impact of this conversation that it's had on you and your experience.
So this is a very important conversation, and why I sort of raised my hand, wanted to be a part of it, because in terms of Black creatives in the industry, it's 2021 and we still struggle being at certain levels. I've worked at many agencies where there were no Blacks in the creative department. And if there were no creatives that were Black females within the department. So this is something I feel very close to. It's something that definitely I feel like the industry is working on, but needs to change at a quicker rate. And also I'd like to change sort of the way we think about creatives, because normally when we say creatives, we think of art directors, we think of copywriters, but that has expanded so much these days that even getting other creatives within the agency space, like makers and animators and strategy, is a part of sort of creative thinking, and other roles, sort of expanding what that means and what we as Black women look like within those spaces.
That's a really great point, that the definition of creative, what is creative now in 2021 and how does that look different from before? Definitely the conversation has to evolve as the role continues to evolve and get deeper. So that makes a lot of sense in what's going on right now. Laronda, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I mirror those, like the idea of when we talk about the pathway to leadership, knowing that there are different entry points, like Terea said, it's not just copywriting and art directing. You can, like if you're pulling in this diverse group of people, then, that can be a different ladder that we're not used to seeing. And I am a copywriter. My experience has been very traditional in that I came in from a traditional agency and, copywriting and kind of worked my way. But it's also true that I've never had a Black teammate. In all of my years, there was one person who was in a side business. We were under the same client, but not on the same team. And when I came in, I actually replaced another Black copywriter woman. So it was one of those things where it was like Highlander syndrome. We talk about it all the time. It's like there can only be one, or it's like you've checked off that box. And granted, this was clearly a long time ago. And we're seeing now the kind of evolution of how things are being, seen a little differently. And, we're in this confluence of, with more attention being paid to Black people in general in the community and in culture, and how that's affecting how people are being hired and considered for jobs that they might not have been seen for before. The time is now, and it's very important that we continue to support kind of this sense that just because it's not what I'm used to seeing from a hiring perspective, that doesn't mean that this person wouldn't be a great contribution to the team, doesn't have a lot to say, doesn't have a lot of good things that, at the end of the day will help make the work stronger.
And since Laronda said that, if I could piggyback on this subject, we look at it from an agency point of view, but I look at it in terms of Black creatives and actually hiring more Black creatives. It makes good business sense, because these days, Black people have an incredible amount of spending power. And we're getting more savvy and being really looking at where we're spending our money, what companies we're spending our monies with. And our agency's jobs is we're representing the brands, we're telling stories that will get people spending their dollars. So we want to see ourselves portrayed authentically. We want to see the diversity of our people. We want to see various stories told, and it's hard to do that if you don't have creatives from in each level sort of working in departments, from strategy to creative, actually challenging the work to say, how can we do a better job at this? And that's not just a matter of checking a box, that's good business sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say a lot of times when in our roles, right, we'll get calls and there are CEOs and senior leaders who are like, we want to be able to fill this senior role, and we want to fill it with Black talent or a person of color, and like, where can we find them? And it's like a question that sometimes like makes you cringe, but also gives you the opportunity and space to say, like, they're right there in your office. You have amazing people that are working for you right now, but they're just not, for some reason, there's a pathway to promotion that's being blocked, right? And so how do we bridge that gap? And like you said, there's a need for it in every role, in every space, more than just one person on a team. It's not a check a box, but there's opportunities to be able to build that and develop the talent within your organization to that, right? And that's a big reason why we created Vanguard, to help organizations to be able to do that, to invest back into their talent, into their Black talent specifically as well, to be able to help create that pathway. So I want to ask you both, since you've been going through the experience and the process, right, knowing that this is important, why is it important for companies to invest in programs like this to be able to help build out this leadership for the future?
Well, I mean, I'll start. I think part of it is that a lot of leadership doesn't know where to start, right? They have these grand ideas. They understand what needs to change, and they've been in meetings where they've discussed how change is important, and some of them believe it. Some of them are on the side of wanting to make these changes, but they're like, how do I do that? And there's sometimes widespread agency kind of plans, but what can they do as individuals? What can leadership do as individuals? And it's kind of like, you can see someone who's in your group, like someone who's been there the whole time doing this great work, who you might not have seen already because of other layers of leadership above them, or because of other, blinders that we have to, it's like sometimes the loudest person in the room is the one that you notice, but the one who's doing the work you don't always see. So I think what Vanguard has done very well is kind of give visibility within, like I happen to know my mentor and my sponsor, but there are people who are like, I'm sitting down and having meetings now with the CEO. I didn't have that access before. I didn't have that visibility. And I think that helps people kind of get out of their, like I'm pencils, like I have my head down, I'm doing the work because I always do the work. I always do a ton of the work. But the people who are, outside of that don't always see it. So I think Vanguard has been very good about raising that visibility and giving people like, oh, now I have this opportunity. I know this person who I know has this work ethic. I know has this kind of this strength of character. I know has this, drive to succeed through Vanguard and programs like that. So I don't know if that fully answered the question, but.
Absolutely.
From my perspective, I think it's interesting because we are listening different because of the Vanguard program. There were programs, sort of things that they were doing, like within my agency, Saatchi and Saatchi, and there were presentations and there were things, but there was not a space where all of the Black talent was sort of connecting and throwing ideas against the wall and saying, this is where I was, or I felt stuck. And then being able to present these to leadership, like my sponsor was the CEO and my mentor is the chief strategy officer. This would have never happened if it wasn't for the Vanguard program. So I have two very powerful women. They have a seat in the room where decisions are made, and I'm connected to them. So I'm not just bringing myself forward, I'm bringing forth other Black people that have worked within the company, maybe not going through the programs, or people that left, bringing sort of what they were experiencing and sort of what they want from this industry. So having that direct connection is something that's very important. And this would not have happened if it wasn't for the Vanguard program, that for the first time, we had leadership listening, we weren't actually being talked at, but able to sort of say, this is what I experienced in this industry, but how do we move past this now? And how do we sort of connect to move me and others past this point that we're at?
I want to add to that if I can, because it's the connection of Black talent, I think, is one of those things. And, we talk about Terea and I have been in the business for a while, but we're in the program with people who have been in the business for, like 5 years. And I think what's great about that is, as we leave the Vanguard space, we'll still have those connections where someone can email me or hit me up on LinkedIn. And like, we know it's like, I can send out something like, hey, I need a new copywriter, anyone know who's available? And this kind of network that's built outside of what we could normally do, even in an office, even in an office space. Me and Terea were in the same building and only saw each other like, very rarely. So I think this is that kind of connective tissue between people who, as time goes on, will continue to grow and progress and have those connections to lift other people up as we go. So.
Yeah, it's a really close group, and it's really beautiful to watch you all, how much you all support and advocate for each other, in the space, and are really on this journey together. And it's just a really amazing experience, I think, especially in its first year. Something we see a lot with MAPE, so it's amazing to just see like a completely different program, but that community is always just like so important, and it's an important part of every program. And I know even, it's already impacted you both in a lot of different ways, personally and professionally. Terea, if you want to start off talking about, I know it's helped you even create a new role, right, for yourself?
Yes. And this is the reason why I love doing this, because maybe someone else is in the position that I was in. Like I said, I've been in this industry for almost 18 years. And I think early on, I had a vision of kind of where I wanted to go, but kind of got lost and stuck in a department, and couldn't see how to get out of that department. Like, sort of operations and project management was supposed to be my entryway into advertising, but then I became very good at it, and I rose from being someone junior to mid-level to senior. But then that's where it stopped. So before this program, I would always tell in all of my reviews, I always got good reviews. Everyone liked me. Terea does a great job. We want her on the project. But then I'm thinking, if that's so, why am I not progressing? Why am I not running a department by now? Or why am I not a director or something? Why am I not moving up? I've been stuck in the same position for almost 10 years. And then the slap in the face kind of to me is a lot of people would leave the agencies I've worked at. And I'd see them, maybe not in my department, but maybe they were junior account people. And the next time I see them, they're a VP or SVP. And I'm like, how did that happen? Or they would reach out to me and say, Terea, we need a project manager. What makes you think that I want to stay in the exact same position? If you thought I was good, call me when you have a director's position or something where I'm actually managing a group, not for a lateral move like that. So when the opportunity came to participate in Vanguard, I'm like, great. This is a place for me to kind of workshop where do I want to go? First, where am I? And I had to admit, I'm stuck. I don't know how to get out of this place I'm in and use, say, my master's I have in curatorial studies. How can I bring some of that in and utilize that in this career I am? I know it's a way to do it because I sat in too many creative reviews, listening to ideas that were very monolithic in terms of their singular stories of Black people or the talent looking a certain way, or now we're going to make someone interracial. And I always spoke up and said, that's not correct and that's not going to go well. And why is this making it to the client? I've always been fearless in that respect, but I'm like, how do I add this more to my role and create someone that's really looking out for the work? Not so much to change it, but how do we make it better? That we're really telling authentic stories through a creative lens, or even as the brief starts out, like what is encouraging for us to tell the story, say, of this Black family or of this Black male. So Vanguard actually gave me a place to kind of workshop this, to go, this is the role I created. And from there, the fellows are so great. Some people invited me to give presentations to their agency. And then it went, give this presentation to our client, telling them about stereotypes that exist and how we can break them and make the work better. So it definitely was one, like I said, getting the ears of the CEO and the chief strategy office going, how do we put some dollars to this? Because no, I don't just want the position, I want the money that goes with it. And two, how am I supported that this is announced in the agency and that I'm utilized in the right way and that people still aren't trying to use me in my old role? And then three, how do we expand this? Because eventually it should become a department, which is my thinking now. I'm like, let's reach for the stars. Even if I don't make it, I'm going to reach high.
Well, it's amazing. That's a lot of it's a lot of ownership in your experience and what you did with Vanguard. And honestly, we celebrate you always for what you've been doing. And I hope you know the impact that you have on all the other Vanguard fellows as well. Like you can see it anytime we're all in this rectangle of trust Zoom calls, and I appreciate you sharing your experience. Laronda, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can add just that what Terea was saying about, like, I've been in the group, even though I've been a creative director for a while, the group kind of, overseeing more businesses, overseeing more teammates, and leading more campaign work. I think that's been a new part of my role. And again, trying to hire, like I've hired been able to hire more people of color onto my team, so that I'm able to impact it that way. But I think what's really broadening kind of the sense of, instead of stepping into the definitions that were previously set by other creative directors, I think that's what ends up happening. And part of what Terea was saying is there are self-defined roles that when we step into them, continue to define themselves in that very narrow way. Unlike what when we see something, we can say, wait, we can change this. This needs to be different. We can be more collaborative. All of our team can be creative. It's not just the copywriter who's responsible for coming up with the words. It's not just the art, like there's culture that each of us bring to a team that we all need to bring to the work so that it does kind of reflect more voices and more people and more, not just from consumers, but from, human beings. So I think there's definitely something to be said for this concept of redefining our roles, and Vanguard, again, in sitting down and analyzing, you know, some of the issues that we've gone through, and analyzing the fact that people within our agency have given us, they've empowered us to kind of have this level of depth of thinking, because they believe that that will become part of how we advance, and that'll help the agency overall. It emboldens us to say, okay, well, you put me in this, and this was the conclusion I came to, is that for Terea, I need to do something else. Like for me, it's like we need to have a different approach to how we build these creative teams. And that's kind of been like, you put me in this position, so now this is what I have to say about it. Let's do it, you know? And I think it's an open kind of two-way street. They're looking for ways to expand, and we're looking for ways to grow. And I think together that means that the industry itself should move forward and progress.
Oh, thank you both for sharing that impact. Two more questions. And, you know, it could be one answer. How can allies, in your opinion, help drive more female equity in the creative space?
Well,
Easy question, right?
no, we definitely need allies, because this couldn't be solved. If Black people could solve this, it would have been solved. So we definitely need allies. And when this question came up, I thought about my experience in terms of, I had an ally and I didn't know I had an ally very early on. And maybe if I had recognized that, I wouldn't have been so stuck. That very early on, we had a CEO. He was a white male. He was from Australia. He was a family man, and he was a husband. Everything I wasn't is what this man was, the total opposite. One day we met and had sort of like, we met at one of the trucks that were parked outside of the building, and we just started to have like a conversation. Learned about his kids. He learned about my background in art, and that how I'm very passionate about art. And I think he got a different perspective of me, like, oh, she's kind of smart or whatever. And it's weird because a higher position had opened at the time to actually be the director of the department. And he's like, Terea, you need to try out for it. I kind of didn't get the clue, because I felt like I can't check all the boxes they want. So I didn't even go after it, because I'd been so used to this industry sort of making me feel like if I didn't have all the boxes to check, then I can't sort of apply for that. But what it taught me is he was an ally. He saw something in me that I didn't even believe in myself at the time. So it also taught me, in terms of allies and mentors, a lot of times when we look at people that are far different from us, there's a learning curve there, where he's gaining an understanding of me as a Black woman coming into the industry, but he saw something and he wanted me to challenge me to move up to it. So a lot of times we should know allies when they're coming to us. They won't always raise their hand and go, I'm an ally. So know when you have an ally in front of you, and also how to use them, not really use them, but work to them for your advantage for where you want to get to. So that's sort of my thing. And a lot of times, like I said, allies will look nothing like us. It won't be a Black woman with locks coming, I'm your ally, I'm here to help you out, or whatever. Be someone that can be far different from us, but sees something in us or needs to understand where we're trying to get to.
Laronda.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, all of that. I think, and it's hard, because sometimes, you know, even people who sometimes seem to be working counter to what you're trying to do can have moments of allyship, right? You're like, okay, that gave me a leg up, or, you know, I see that as an opportunity, as opposed to, and I think the thing with allyship and why it is so important is, it's kind of like, and especially maybe because I think as a creative, I'm like, there are 20,000 ways to tell a story, right? Open your mind to the fact that the way that I tell the story may be different, but it's still just as valid. And I think that's where, to me, allyship comes in, and from a creative perspective, like, this is not something you're used to seeing. This is not what's always tested well. You know, this is not how you built stories before. But if you look at how, you know, content is built on the TikToks of the world and all these other platforms, you'll see that there are different ways to tell these stories. And that's kind of how, you know, if you're open, and that's like, be an ally and appreciate that you may not understand it, but that doesn't mean it's not valid. And I know that's a slightly different way, like as opposed to the ally who's rooting for you in the boardroom and rooting for you behind the scenes when, you know, opportunity arises. And that's very important. But I think just even in the day-to-day, there's something to be said for trust that I'm in this position because I know what I'm doing. and, believe that what I'm bringing to you is a perfectly valid way to do it, even if you don't quite understand it yet. And I think that to me is like how we move the work forward, in addition to just supporting each other as a team.
Yeah, I could totally understand. Sounds like, the day-to-day, the small day-to-day ways that you can help are just as important as like being able to advocate in the room when someone's not there. Right? It impacts the way you show up to work and experience you have. So thank you for sharing that, both of you.
And I don't know if I brought my story around full circle. So just wanted to go back to when we say how allyship could work. I think a lot of times it's people linking up with people that don't necessarily look like them and being willing to mentor each other in a way. Being able to say, I'm going to take this person under my wing, learn more about them, but also I'm going to learn from them so that if I'm in a leadership position, I can be a better leader. By this person. So I think that's the way allyship should work. And that was what my whole story was about, that sometimes look for people that are far different from you. They can be an ally and learn how you can sort of mentor each other through this, because in all, it's going to be better for the company anyway. The work will be better, relationships will be better, people will work harder, and we'll all have sort of a good feeling being there working for the company.
Like a cross mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Both need to learn on both sides. I think that is really important, an important part of even what we try to create with Vanguard, right? With the sponsors, to be able to have that cross mentorship and support each other. And my final question to you both, and I'd love to hear both of your answers, is what's your message to Black women who may be exploring or in the process of their careers in media and advertising?
Well, do it. I know it's pretty pat to say it, just like go in, because everybody is nobody else can say it like you can say it. And I think it's very much a voice that is needed in the industry now. In Vanguard, I think at one point we kind of joked, it was like, what would Brad do? I don't know if that was, we really did. It was, but basically it's like the audacity, like what Terea was saying about, feeling like you need to have all these things in place in order to step forth and do something, because we're so used to over preparing to succeed. And I think at this point, it's kind of like we talk about how other groups are allowed to just be mediocre and get in, and keep climbing. We should be allowed to get in and then learn, get in and be, as vivacious and as quiet as we want to be, like all of those things that we are. We should not be afraid to kind of step forth and just say, I can do this. I can think creatively. I can tell stories. I can visualize stories. I can do this in this space. And I can move things forward. I can move industries forward, and that's kind of, it's when I question why I've been around in this business for so long, it's kind of like for those opportunities to change things that haven't been changed for I'm still like every now and then I still see a shampoo commercial. I'm like, really, we're still doing this? And I'm like, but in that thing that we just shot, we're trying to change that, and all of these things, like trying to make these changes to culture that we know are living outside of this kind of grand advertising world, helping it catch up. And there are it's not the white folks who have been doing it for a long time who are going to do that. It's us, it's the people of color, it's the people from diverse backgrounds, it's the people who are representing the world that will make the industry start to reflect the world better. So please step up, call me.
And I guess the advice I would give is know why you want to enter the industry and sort of what you have to offer, meaning what your passions are, because I think what we do in our personal lives can transfer over to what we're doing in our professional lives. So always think about that. I think where I made my mistake, I wasn't intentional about my career, and that leads to you being stuck. So like I said, I had to figure out this year that I have a passion for art. I have a passion for hearing stories, always connecting to what makes this story so special and authentic that it's like no other story. And when you hear it and when you see that, you always lean in a little bit like, wow, they're talking about my people, or that's my family. So how can we sort of dissect that and find that in the work? I learned that could be my contribution, and that's very much related to the way I look at art. and being in love with museums and curating artwork and shows. That can be brought into advertising. So the way we kind of look at things entering advertising, know what you have a passion for and say, is there any way that I can bring that into the career I'm pursuing inside of advertising, and be fearless about it. Fight for that. If it's a little different than the role they're considering for you, show them how those skills can translate into what you may be interviewing for.
Terea and Laronda, I love listening to you. I can talk to you guys all day. Honestly, I appreciate your insight, your feedback, your vulnerability, your experience, thank you so much for your time. This has been a really amazing conversation, and I think an important one. I feel really lucky to be able to hear you both here in this conversation and moderate it. And I think, the space at 3% to be able to have these conversations is really a blessing. And so thank you, 3% Conference, for and Kat Gordon for really letting us be able to have this conversation today. I think talking about how we can support and advocate for Black female creatives in this industry is really important. And I think it's something we try to push on and on at the Forays Foundation and with Vanguard. And so whatever we could do to help this conversation move, thank you both for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a great experience.